Good morning, Broncos country. This is Legends of Mile High, and I'm your host, Thomas Hall. And welcome to the show. Thanks for joining, where we talk about history and current events. And today we do have some current events to talk about. The Broncos have finally rounded out almost all of their coaching staff. We've waited patiently at the edge of our seats in order to see who these coaches were going to be. And now we finally have almost all of them to talk about. So that's a good thing and sometimes a bad thing because we're going to talk a little bit about at least what I think are some good hires and some head scratchers. So that's what we're going to be jumping in today. So thank you very much again for joining the show. And so let's talk a little bit about how long it took and if that was a good thing or not. I'm an impatient man. So part of me was disappointed that it took a little too long for the Broncos to round out their staff. I was getting a little worried, so to speak, about are they going to be ready by the combine? Are they going to be ready by free agency? And it was a little humorous when other new media was complaining about it. And Sean Payton took to Twitter to let everybody know that he had it under control, had them hired. It just the insiders just don't know about it, which was pretty interesting, but it doesn't help people who are impatient like me. A little bit of concern was that they missed out on maybe some coaches that they could have had that might have been a little bit better, but it's getting taken care of. So that's a good thing. So let's jump into the chat, see who's joined before we really get into the meat of this thing, and then we'll get started. Dominique Martin coming in early this morning. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. I know it's early, but I'm glad to see you here. And Dominique says, Happy Friday, Broncos country. What is everyone feeling about the VJ hire? Broncos for life. Yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about this morning for sure. I mean, that's one that is definitely of interest to Broncos country, being that there was some past history with Vance Joseph. Dom is coming in. Good morning, Dom. Glad to see you here this morning. Thank you very much. Dom says, Good morning, Thomas. And Seth's jumping in as well, saying good morning and always Mile High Huddle for life. Thank you very much. Carlos coming in. Good morning with the Broncos Nation. All right. A little bit different than Broncos country, but it's good to change it up once in a while. So I know Mike Kliss calls it Broncos land. So it doesn't matter. We're all part of the same fan group. I don't care how you say it, as long as you're a Broncos fan and you're coming in and checking out the show. Jeremy Sean, thank you for coming in this morning. Good to see you here. Morning, Thomas. He says, after sleeping on it, I still hate the Joseph hire. We waited for mediocrity. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of it, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. Michael Williams coming in from Facebook, appreciate it, saying good morning. It's great. It's a nice crowd, a little bit different than I've seen in here in the morning. And Justin Reif coming in saying good morning. Well, good morning to all you as well. Thank you so much for jumping into the live chat this morning, and definitely throw in your comments about these coaches, and we'll talk about them. And Broncos Beats coming in here. The hit piece was so dumb, saying Russ wanted Pete fired, but fails to say they shopped Russ multiple off seasons. Yeah, I saw that this morning. That incredible. Yeah, I think that some of this stuff is getting a little bit out of hand. And they'll all shut their mouths when the Broncos start winning again. And I expect them to start winning again. So hopefully there won't be a lot of Russ hate out there. He seems like a pretty nice guy. Seems like he does pretty well. So in the community and whatnot. So it's a little bit disheartening to hear all this stuff coming out. Jetty Splash coming in from YouTube saying, I've been having a bad feeling for a couple days. Figure let's let these chips fall where they may. Yeah, I mean we kind of have to now at this point. I mean, we're almost done talking about it because the coaching staff is there, and that's it. That's who Sean Payton wants, and that's what he's going with. So yeah, let's talk about Vance Joseph first. There's obviously some I would say a little bit of animosity or whatever for Vance Joseph just because he was so terrible as a head coach with the Broncos when he had his opportunity. Now, he wasn't the worst of all time, obviously, but he was pretty bad. I mean, if you look at all the bad coaches that have come through the Mile High City, he's one of the ones you would point to for sure. Not at the very bottom, but pretty close. So that doesn't bode well. But from my perspective, he just wasn't ready for that big of a role yet. He may get a shot down the road, but I just don't think he was ready for that head coaching job. And I think John Elway really zeroed in on him for some reason and wanted to hire him pretty much above everybody else, and he did. Now, the problem with Vance Joseph, in my mind, isn't necessarily that he was a bad head coach. My mind, he wasn't a great defensive coordinator at any time. He was good. He had some good seasons and he's had some bad seasons. So you look at his seasons in Arizona, his most recent stop, he had some pretty poor seasons where they were ranked, close to dead last in the NFL for defensive metrics. And he had a couple good seasons. So it's hit or miss, but nothing. When you look at Rex Ryan's, one of the candidates, he had some number one seasons. Like, he had some great defenses when he was defensive coordinator. And a lot of it has to do with personnel. And, that's that you can't really help that. But the coach needs to make the players play. And even if they're not as good or they're not a lot of stars, you got to put them in the right position to succeed. And I didn't think Vance Joseph did that very often. I think he did it once in a while and people liked it. You got to see him move players around a little bit, but then you also get to see head scratching moves like when he had Will Parks as the inside linebacker in a 1st and goal situation from the 1-yard line. That to me isn't putting players in position to succeed. I remember that. And I was just like up in arms, like, why are you doing that? And of course the team scored a touchdown because, you don't have the big bodies to bang in there in the goal line. So that was a head scratcher. But the other thing that really bothers me, and we saw it firsthand, and my buddy, fan of the year, Ron Katz, pointed it out on Twitter recently. He didn't like it because he doesn't like the hire either, because I saw and he saw that Vance Joseph defense in Denver kind of quit on him. You could see it in those games, and that bothers me because you compare that to Evero, right? Last season, those players didn't give up, man. They were playing hard the entire time, even when the season was over and they knew Hackett was gone, right? They still were playing hard. Even after all the injuries, they played hard. And that's all you can ask for. And they didn't do that for Vance Joseph. And that, some of those players are gone, obviously, but some of them are still here, and that bothers me. So that those two big things, why I don't really care for the Vance Joseph hire as defensive coordinator. It those are things you can't really overcome just by having some more experience. I think there's something about leadership that failed there, and that's a concern for me. Jetty Splash coming in with super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. And speaking of support, make sure you like the show and share it with your friends and family. We'll get some more people. We'll talk a little more history, and we'll really bring up the Broncos of the past going forward. So thank you, Jetty. Jetty says, thanks for these podcasts, and you're welcome. And thanks for coming and joining in. He says, Sean Payton has experience rebuilding. VJ's interview was probably the best match for what Sean Payton has in mind. Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, he probably wouldn't have hired him had he not had an interview that he liked. The problem is, I don't know what he could have said that would have convinced Sean Payton that he could actually stop the Chiefs, the Pat Mahomes chief, when he didn't have a track record of doing that very well. So I don't know what he said. He obviously interviews well because John Elway fell in love with him and tried to get him to the Broncos before he even got him as a head coach. So he obviously interviews well, but the problem is that has to translate to the field, and that didn't as a head coach, and it only was hit or miss as a defensive coordinator. And that's what concerns me. But everyone's saying trust Sean Payton, and I do. He's a great coach, but they're also saying trust Nathaniel Hackett and trust Vic Fangio and trust Vance Joseph. And I'm not ready to trust anybody that comes in to coach the Denver Broncos until they start winning. I've put my trust in 3 coaches and they've failed. So I'm going to wait and see what happens on the field before I say, okay, I'm happy now. Tiffany Silver coming in with a super chat. Thank you very much. It's awesome to see you here. I don't think I've seen you on here before, at least not in the live comments. So I thank you for watching. I thank you for the support. Will Joe Lombardi be OC or will it be someone else? She asks. Well, the rumors are he's going to be hired, and he's going to be hired as some offensive position. It makes sense to me that he's going to be offensive coordinator. That's the only one that really isn't filled, unless he's going to be some sort of assistant. Now, I'm not as I'm not impressed with Joe Lombardi, but I'm not as upset about if he becomes the offensive coordinator because he worked well with Sean Payton in New Orleans. They had some good offenses. It's probably more Payton than it is Joe Lombardi. I don't think Lombardi did very well with when he wasn't with Sean Payton. So maybe the combination of those two work pretty well, but he didn't do a very good job with I don't think with Justin Herbert in San Diego or no, LA, sorry, Chargers. I still go back to San Diego. I've been watching. I can't get that out of my head. It's been years, but I still call the Chargers San Diego Chargers, and I probably will for the rest of my life. I don't mind the hire if he's an offensive coordinator. The problem that I had was, I guess, if he does become the offensive coordinator, was when Sean Payton was first interviewing all these young up and coming kind of stars, so to speak, that are going to be coming in and making a name for themselves and bringing in new perspectives. That I liked. I thought, okay, Sean Payton's this older coach who I thought at first was just going to bring in his guys that were familiar, but he was interviewing all these younger up and coming, probably going to be good coaches, so to speak, in the future. And I thought, wow, nice new perspective. But then he kind of is now just going with what he knows. And so that was a little bit of a struggle for me. And I think, and the reason why is because if you go back when you look at the Broncos when they hired John Fox was one of those old timer coaches who I thought, oh, just going to bring in people he's familiar with, somebody that had been fired that was an offensive coordinator for him in the past or defensive coordinator. But he brought in young up and comers. Brought in Mike McCoy, who had never been an offensive coordinator. He was with him in Carolina, but gave him a shot. And McCoy did an incredible job that first year with Tim Tebow. And then, we all saw what Peyton Manning was able to do. And that was a lot of Peyton Manning, but that was a good hire, young up and comer who became a head coach. He didn't really succeed, so to speak, as head coach, but that was a good hire. And he also did the same thing with Dennis Allen, another one of those players or coaches who hadn't been there. But he gave him a shot and he did a great job. And now he got a head coaching gig with the Raiders, and now he's the head coach of the Saints. So I like those. I like it when you bring in those coaches that are kind of diamonds in the rough, maybe, and make them a good coach for the future. And that's what a good leader does. A good leader makes other good leaders, right? And so I'm a little disappointed to see Lombardi being the top candidate right now for offensive coordinator. And maybe he won't be, but it seems like it's going that way. So let's talk about a few of the other coaches that they brought in. Now, the one that I really like is Greg Minuski as the inside linebackers coach. I like that hire. I think it's a great hire. I went back and I looked at what he's done at his other linebacking coach gigs. And I know we all know that he was with San Francisco and there were some great linebackers there, but the two that really stand out to me, and the first one is Donnie Edwards, right? When he was with the Chargers, had his best seasons. And Donnie Edwards was a pretty good linebacker to begin with, but Minuski helped coach him into his only all-pro. He got two all-pro second teams while he was being coached by Minuski. And I thought that was, that's a pretty good job. I think that highlights what he can do, because Donnie Edwards wasn't in the conversation for all-pros until then. And then the other one was Kevin Mitchell when he was at Washington, had his best season. And that's a name that you don't, that's not an all-star name that you would point out, but he coached him into into his best season. And this is a name that people don't remember, but that's a good coach. So I'm very happy that is the coaching hire. But on the flip side, the other linebackers coach, I'm not overly impressed with. So, hopefully them working together, they can build something good. But I think that Will Hoyt, if that's the way to pronounce it, didn't get the most out of Khalil Mack after spending a lot of money to get him there. And I'm not a big fan of Khalil Mack. I think he definitely is a bit overrated. He got a lot of sacks against one one offensive tackle for the Broncos. He gave up 5 sacks, and then all of a sudden he's this great player, but he's not been great. He's been pretty good, but he's not been great since then. So, but he still didn't coach. He had very few sacks and didn't have a great season. Jeff Cornelison. Thank you, Jeff, coming from Facebook. Appreciate the comment. And his question is, will or can Sean Payton ask VJ to run a 4-3 or another scheme? Well, he can ask him. I don't know why he would. The personnel that the Broncos have right now are more fitting for a 3-4, right? They would have to make some moves to bring in some other people. I mean, look at Benito. I mean, he's not going to be a good fit in as a defensive end in a 4-3. And they're counting on him to be a player for the future, right? So the things like that you got to consider. I think I don't know why they would. I don't know why they would change to a 4-3. Frankly, most of the 3-4 versus 4-3 arguments kind of going out the window. Back in the olden days, yeah, I mean that was something that you really had to consider. But most of the time, the defenses aren't in their base packages anymore because teams are throwing on first down more often now. They're coming out and trying to get yardage on first down through the pass. So this base packages kind of go out the window, and the defenses get a chance to sub. So you can't just come out and surprise the team with an offensive game plan, right away that would defeat the base packages. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, you can ask him, but I don't think you would. I think the team's built for a 3-4, and they should stick with it. Now, Jeremy Sean is coming in with a good comment here, saying, "I'm calling it now. Next year, after Dennis Allen is fired, he will replace Vance Joseph after the defense regresses." That's possible. I think that's an astute observation, because I thought Vance Joseph would be. I think Vance Joseph is going to be fired within 3 years. I don't think he's going to do a good enough job to get that defense where it needs to be, and Sean Payton will get tired of it and send him packing. He obviously got let go in Arizona. He couldn't make that, and that wasn't a great defense. They didn't have a lot of great players, so to speak, but still, you've got to work with what you have. And so you're probably right. I think maybe it'll be sooner than that. I don't know, but I'm sure Sean Payton would love to have Dennis Allen back with him and coaching the defense. And that's another person you wouldn't have to worry about leaving, right? Because he's already had a shot twice and failed. I doubt he'd get another shot as head coach. So he's going to stick around, just like Lombardi will probably stick around as offensive coordinator for a long time. Lawrence Rivera coming in from Facebook. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. And he says, "Oh man, sore on every spot, but it's Friday. Time to get it." Oh yeah. Thank God it's Friday. Really. This has been a long week, a long week. So thank you. Happy Friday. Michael Ronquillo, Facebook stars, man. I appreciate you being here every morning. It's wonderful to see you in here. It's wonderful to see you support all the Mile High Huddle shows. So you're the Hall of Famer in Mile High Huddle. That's for sure. Michael Ronquillo says, "Good morning, Thomas Hall and Legends of Mile High. Go Broncos and Buckham." Yeah, the Buckham shirts are out there. So get yourself one if you're ready. I'm not quite ready yet because the Let's Ride still stings, but hopefully the Buckham can be backed up. And we'll see what happens on the field. And hopefully the Broncos are winning and Russell Wilson is having his comeback tour, so to speak, and the Buckham shirts take off. That would be a great sight to see. But again, I'm holding back a little bit. I was too excited for Nathaniel Hackett, so I'm just going to take it easy, watch what happens on the field, and hopefully those turn into wins. Okay, so let's go to the one coach that was, I think, maybe the most head-scratching move, and that's Davis Webb, right? Davis Webb coming in to be the quarterback's coach. Now, I know the rumors are out there that he's got a brilliant football mind and everything else. They said that about Matt Patricia as well, and he was quite a failure in Detroit. I even thought that he was going to be a good head coach because he had that great mentality coming out. That he's going to be one of the better head coaches that left Belichick. But Davis Webb, just got done playing in the NFL. I think he only threw 40 passes in the NFL, which, he's a backup for a couple years. I don't know. That's a head scratcher for me. And maybe it's a great great move. Maybe turns out to be a brilliant move, but that's very little experience for me, for my take, to come in younger than Russell Wilson, right? To coach Russell Wilson, who, the rumors out there that, he likes his own way of doing things. And is he going to be able to command that quarterback room, having not really done anything in the NFL, not as a coach and not really as a player? Now, getting to the NFL is a huge deal. Like, even as a backup, you're still one of the greatest out there, compared to, how many people that don't even get to the NFL. So I don't want to knock him. But even in college, the knock on him coming out of college was he only threw passes less than 10 yards. And Russell Wilson is a deep ball type passer. So I don't know how that's going to work. It's a head scratcher for me. I don't know. I hope it works out. And it is just a quarterback coach. And again, Payton runs the show, right? He runs the show, but it'll be interesting to see how Russell Wilson and Davis Webb interact together and how they make that work. It'll be interesting. And if it's a success, man, you're going to put Davis Webb's name down as a up and comer for a head coach for sure. He'll rise up the ranks pretty quickly if he can make that work. If Russell Wilson has a big bounce back season, people are going to be pointing to Davis Webb. So it's an interesting move, to say the least, but it's head scratcher for me. Now, the other one I do like, which is going to be interesting, and I think I like it because of the historical kind of connotation that comparison that I can make, and that's Kerry Colbert. Number one, he has some history with the Broncos, which I like. I like when players, or someone played for the team or coached for the team in the past. They know the history, they know the rivalries. They really, they want to win for the Broncos, which is, I always enjoy. I like that. But the thing that he's been a college wide receivers coach for quite a while. So he has a lot of experience, and he has experience playing in the NFL. He played for several teams, so he bounced around a little bit. But it gives me a reminder of when Mike Shanahan hired Mike Heimerdinger as a wide receivers coach. Same type of background, college coach, came into the Broncos, gave him a shot from the college ranks, and he got to coach Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey. And man, those two were incredible wide receivers. Rod Smith belongs in the Hall of Fame in my mind, and Eddie Mack, man, amazing to watch. What a wonderful, wonderful player, just tough as nails. And the stories about him, cutting a hole in his shoe that was a size or too small so he could run faster. It's amazing. So that gives me those Heimerdinger vibes. So I'm kind of happy with that hire, and I hope it works out. Clayton Huron, great to see you here. Thanks for coming in from Facebook stars. Thank you for the support, man. I really appreciate it. It's tough to get up in the morning and watch this show live. It's early, but I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. And Clayton says, we're slowly getting our staff together. What are your thoughts so far on them all? Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about that. I think it's hit or miss for me, right? I've kind of talked about some of the ones I didn't like. Talking about some of the ones that I did like, and so far we've gotten through most of them. And I really think if it works out, it's going to be great. But I think there's a couple of them that might be, gone with that experiment, may not make it. But if they do, some of them, like Davis Webb, if that experiment works, he's going to be head coach sooner rather than later. So we'll see what happens. But I think he's only 28. That's pretty young to be stepping in and coaching an older, experienced vet quarterback. Albert Knoppers, appreciate you, man, coming in. It's good to see you. Hope that hat's still working out well for you. He says, good morning, Thomas. Thank you, Albert. It's great to see you here in the morning and listening into Legends of Mile High. Lawrence Rivera coming with super chat. Man, I appreciate the support. Again, thank you for being here. I love it when you are putting comments into the chat. You always have some great ones. And he says, VJ is the best of a bad situation. Sean thought he had Evero and at worst Vic. After they bailed, Rex wanted cash, but that wasn't happening. Exactly. That's what I think. It's almost a consolation prize. And that's what bothers me. It took a long time to get the coaches in. And you're right. Evero didn't want to be here in Denver. And then Vic Fangio went to Miami, and then they're kind of left with what do we do now? But they were still like decide what happened to him. I thought that was a good move. I thought that was a move that he could bring somebody young up and coming in and turn out to be a great defensive coordinator. And maybe he's worried that that guy's going to leave if he was really good as a head coach, but that's what good leaders do. They make better, make more good leaders out there. So I think you're right. I think they missed out, and they should have done what it took to keep Evero. And maybe they tried to, and he just said, no, I don't want to do it. And that's, there's only so much you can do. If he didn't want to be here, then it's not going to be the greatest situation, and he may not work out. Right. So yeah. And Fangio, that's another one like Vance Joseph. Did we really want him back here in Denver? Well, that ship sailed, and then they were kind of stuck with the leftovers, so to speak. And that's what happens when you take a long time to make your decisions. Jeff Cornelison, thank you for coming in with Facebook stars. Appreciate the support. He says good morning, and has looks like a sun in there. So hopefully the weather is changing. I know everybody's getting some storms, man. The Colorado area got hit with storms. Man, we had in Albuquerque area, we had the worst wind I've seen here. Man, I thought we were going to blow the house away. So Wizard of Oz situation. But yeah, thank you for coming in with the support. It's great to see you here. Now I've kind of talked about the other coaches because they've were brought in before. So we've talked about a lot of those other coaches, but I think the offensive line coach, Zach Strief, I think that's a pretty good hire. Has experience with Sean Payton. I like it. We'll see how it works out, but he seems like a pretty good coach, and he's a lot of experience in the NFL. So that's a good one. The other tight ends coach was a pretty good hire, I think. And then they kept a couple of the Broncos leftovers or holdovers, not leftovers, holdovers. Marcus Dixon, I think, did a pretty decent job with the defensive line. I think he's one of those coaches that are gonna keep building, getting better. And Christian Parker with the DBs, I think that was good to keep them. But cleaning house was what it took. He had to clean house. Other than Evero leaving, I think that was something that was needed really to make the Broncos kind of change their chemistry or the atmosphere or whatever, get rid of some of those coaches that were there that had seen a lot of losing, and bring in some new fresh faces in hopes that things get changed. And then the final piece, they hired Ben Kotka, I think that's how that's pronounced, to be the special teams coordinator. And they went out and got a cool name, right? Chris Banjo. Great. I mean, a DB I remember watching Chris Banjo. I mean, that's a fun name. He's to be the assistant special teams coach. And I hope that works out. He seems like he might be a good coach, but he was also one of those that was just playing in the NFL, right? And now he's a assistant special teams coach, which to me is good. You bring in those people with a little bit experience in the NFL as playing, but not any real coaching experience, and you put them in a situation where they can learn and kind of grow. And I think that's a good move. And I think there's some familiarity with Banjo and Payton, so I think that might work out. And I could be completely wrong, but as assistant special teams coach, learning under not only the special teams coach, but the assistant head coach, Mike Westhoff, is a legend. I think that's just a great situation for Banjo to be. And I like Westhoff. I thought he was going to be the special teams coordinator, but he came in as assistant head coach. And I think that's a great move. So all in all, I think there's some pretty solid moves that the Broncos have made in the coaching ranks, but definitely some head scratchers that I really can't get my arms around yet. Like why these folks? But who knows? It may end up paying off, and that's what I'm hoping for. Like I don't care if I disagreed with it or not. If the Broncos start winning, I'm happy. I don't care if they every coach that they hired I didn't like at the time, but it worked out. So just have to win, man. Just got to go out there and win. And a lot of the narrative out there will change, and then Broncos country can be happy again, back to the good old days of winning. So let's hope that that all plays out on the field. John Satsivin, I'm having a hard time reading that. I need glasses, I think. But John's coming in. Thank you so much. Comes in with a comment. Do you see Sean Payton changing his offensive philosophy a little? Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. He has to change it a little bit, just because the quarterback that he had in New Orleans for most of his career, Drew Brees, is a different style of quarterback than Russell Wilson. And you can see that he changed it up. He changed up his offense philosophy even in New Orleans. I mean, he had different quarterbacks. He made Teddy Bridgewater a really good quarterback for part of a season. You know, he got Jameis Winston to be a better quarterback. Taysom Hill. He has the ability to change his offensive philosophy to fit the quarterback. And I think that's what he's going to do. So, yeah, I believe he will change his offensive philosophy a little. I mean, so the principles will still be there, but what he calls and how he makes the plays kind of unfold on the field will be different. Michael Ronquillo, man, 46,400 total Facebook stars. Most Facebook stars in the history of a Mile High Huddle podcast. Man, that is amazing. That is incredible support. If we had 10 or 15 Michael Ronquillos come to the show every day, I could probably retire. So thank you so much, man. That's amazing. You are on the Mount Rushmore for sure, Mile High Huddle. And we really appreciate it. I don't know if we can say it enough how much we appreciate you, Michael. I know that people say that on Twitter and whatnot. So I hope that you're getting your support's worth, so to speak. So thank you very much. We definitely want to continue to see you here. And Scott's coming in. He's in the background. Thank you for being here, Scott. And Michael made the Mount Rushmore on YouTube last year too. That's great, man. I'm actually in awe. It's that is great. I'm glad that we bring you enough good content that you're happy to stick around and watch as long as you do. So thank you so much. Now, I think that's all of the coaches. I may have missed one, some of the smaller coaches, but again, I think it's a hit or miss for me. I think once we see it play out, I'm going to be at training camp again next year. So I'll bring you what information I can glean from training camp, watching these coaches. I know last year there was some coaching that wasn't great, with Butch Berry in training camp. So hopefully we'll see something a little bit different this year. So I will bring that back for you, but that's a ways off. So we still got to go through the whole off season. So here we coming up, free agency is right around the corner, and then the draft, and then we will see what the Broncos hopefully have in store. And really, I hope they hit some of those late round picks that become stars, because that's what the Broncos have missed for a while. They have missed on some of those later round picks that they were hoping would pan out. And you really need to fill out your roster with some lucky hits in those later rounds. So, I mean, like Baron Browning, a good third round choice, but then they missed on Lloyd Cushenberry. So got to round out that roster with a few draft choices, and we're going to see some free agency moves, I believe. I think you're going to see at least 3 Broncos getting cut or traded to get rid of some of their salary cap so they can go out there and get some new players. So thank you very much for joining. I'm going to end the show now on a great note. The Broncos look to be set to start winning again. So I think Russell Wilson's going to have a bounce back season. And I think the Broncos offense is going to be one of the better offenses in the league. Now, they may not be the best, but looking at Sean Payton's history with offenses and working with really elite quarterbacks, and that's what Russell Wilson was until last year, was an elite quarterback. So we're going to see the Broncos put up some points. And I'm a big fan of defensive performances, but it'll be nice to see that the Broncos score points for a change. So thank you very much for joining, and I appreciate all of the support. Make sure you, Dan Hall coming in last. Thank you so much coming in from Facebook Stars. 3 things you can count on: death, taxes, and Michael Ronquillo on Mile High Huddle. Absolutely. Thanks for that comment. That's a great way to send off the show. Cheers to Michael and the rest of the folks that jumped into the live chat. Appreciate the comments. So have a great day, Broncos fans.